I'm Clarke Speaks, the catastrophic injury lawyer. Welcome to The Verdict. Welcome to The Verdict. I'm Clarke Speaks, and I'm here with Brian Groesser. Brian, let me ask you about what happens if if a person's hurt at work and their employer does not have workers' compensation insurance or tells their employee they don't have workers' compensation insurance.
Yeah, that's an unfortunate scenario that I really don't have good answers for you before in that regard. There is something that's called the uninsured docket. And the reason why I say I don't have good answers for you, the employer is going to have to pay eventually something to somebody, right? It's just going to be a matter of what money they have of it. Usually, if you're talking about an employer that doesn't have comp insurance and they're required to have it if they have three or more employees here within the state of North Carolina, in those circumstances where they don't have coverage, you see it a lot in construction, but it's a situation that they're probably flying by the seat of their pants anyways, and they don't have a vast amount of money. That's why they don't have the coverage in the first place, because they don't have the assets to pay for it. And I say it's unfortunate because the person that gets screwed in all of this is typically the employee. What you end up have happening is you get thrown onto this uninsured docket, and that's where the employer gets basically held to task by the industrial commission, and maybe they get ordered to pay something, but it's only what they have available to pay. Like they're not the insurance company that has all this revenue from premiums that have been paid over the course of the past few years. They're just an employer with probably a very marginal profit existing, if at all. Maybe they don't even have a profit. And so, can you recover under uninsured? You can. You'd go through the uninsured docket. You can have representation for that. Um, Typically, your recovery is going to be very limited, though, in that process because of the fact that you're not dealing with an insurance carrier now. You're dealing directly with an employer, and if that employer does not have coverage, it's likely because they don't have a lot of assets and money to begin with, and it's getting like getting blood out of a turnip, right?
And
Yeah,
most of the time, they don't even show up and participate in this process. Is that fair?
that could happen, and they can be in contempt of court at that point. You can face criminal charges in those circumstances, but that doesn't benefit you as the worker, right? I mean, again, this is more of a slap on the wrist or more for the employer,
Punitive for them to teach them a lesson so that in the future they'll have its insurance.
but that doesn't help you,
Doesn't help you.
right?
So the reason I ask is because what I'm picturing is a person looking at a new job and thinking, should I work for this employer or not? And does it matter to me if this person has the insurance that they need and has done the things that they need to do to protect workers from accidents and from injuries? And so what's your advice to those people?
I think it looks weird if you're in an office setting or something and you're in the hiring process. You're like, hey, do you have I mean, you can ask it, but I think that in a situation where you're in physically demanding type of work where injuries are more likely to happen, I think it's a fair question to ask in the opening, especially again, I would venture, I don't have an actual statistic, but just based off of experience, I would say 75% of these cases where there's no coverage have to deal with some sort of construction, whether it's the folks that are doing the woodworking or the painters or the electric, whoever in the construction industry. You see a lot of ghost policies. You see policies that don't exist at all.
What's a ghost
A
policy?
ghost policy, it's kind of hard to explain, but it's a policy that on paper it exists sufficient enough maybe for that subcontractor or whatever to get the job, but there isn't really a policy there. There's not
Piece
an
of pop
actual.
paper they can show the GC, the general contractor, and say, we have all the coverages we need. But when it comes time to pay a claim, there's not sufficient coverage there to even address the claim.
And who that protects is the general contractor because they asked for the certificate and they got it. Well, who doesn't protect is the employee who gets injured, and their employer, the subcontractor, doesn't have a policy. There is no coverage for them. And the general contractor is typically protected because they were able to get the policy. That's all that they were required to do. And the person left holding the bag is the employee. So if you are working in the construction industry, if you're working in a physically demanding type job, then yeah, I think it's perfectly fine for you to ask, do you have workers' comp coverage? And just to make sure that you are protected so that you are not, and ask and actually see the policy. Like, see the policy. One of the things that an employee or prospective employee can do is go onto the Industrial Commission website, which is www.ic.nc.gov. And under there, there's a subsection. It's called database. And you can go and do a searchable database under the insurance website in terms of typing in an employer's name. So if you have a Joe Smith Masonry LLC, is who you work for, you can type in that employer name and it'll spit out their insurance coverage for like the past 5, 6, 7 years. If you see that they don't have coverage currently, then you know, or at least you have a pretty good idea that they probably don't have workers' comp coverage.
And that can really matter if something happens on the job and you get hurt. You know, this coverage becomes very, very important for people to be able to maintain their lifestyle and take care of their families going forward.
And this is also one of those things, Clark, that you could ask us about, right? If you're familiar with Speaks and you don't feel comfortable about necessarily taking that job, just give us a call and we can look it up because we do this all the time. We can look it up quickly on the website for you and say, oh yeah, it looks like they have coverage. You know, it's one of those things that at least we can look up for you as well. And that you were talking about, maybe making sure that your steps are correct at the very beginning of your path. You don't even have a comp claim yet, right? You may never have one. Hopefully you don't, but we want to make sure that you're protected. This is kind of under your umbrella of comp. Make sure that this company actually has insurance.
Thank you, Brian. That's great. That's helpful information. When we come back, I want to ask you about if people get frustrated at the end of or during the pendency of a workers' compensation claim. Some people just get frustrated and they want to quit. I want to ask you about that, and if is that a good strategy, and how that might affect a person's claim. We'll see you next time on The Verdict. Thanks for joining us. Don't forget to subscribe and follow us to stay up to date with our weekly episodes. We'll see you next time.